Welcome along to the Heathen Movie Channel, and more specifically to episode 42 of our horror movie review show, I Know What You Watched Last Week. Now let's get straight into it and give the people, what they want to know. This week I have mostly been cooking ribs.
Fascinating.
Ribs, last night's batch. I'm gonna put them in the 7s. Today after the marination process, I'll probably hit an 8. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough left over for you to sample them, so I'll be having that. I've also got to cook a chili pretty soon, so this is bringing you the flavour from the backyard barbecue on the Heathen Movie Channel. And I'll tell you what, I've got a chili that will knock your Yanks' socks off.
Shall we get back to what this show's normally about?
I also watch some movies.
Yeah.
None of them to do with chili. But what a bunch. What a bunch this week.
Oh dear.
3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3. What do we watch?
We started with Resurrection of Evil.
What a title.
Mm-hmm.
The Resurrection
Of Evil.
of Evil.
Then we saw something called simply Eloise.
Based on the Eloise psychiatric unit.
And finally we watched, with the English translation of the title, is River of Fear.
And if I remember the regular title, something like Uppsara or something like that. Because, on this channel, the Heathen Movie Channel, and more specifically on I Know What You Watched Last Week, we're international. We bring you movies from Italy, Germany, Canada, America, Russia, Hungary. We watch a Kazakh movie, and now it's the turn of... Yeah! Estonia! Yeah!
But I thought they were going to the border of Estonia. Also, can I just
Estonia.
make a
It's
little
an Estonian movie.
addition to that? The one and only place that Johnny does not watch movies from is England. your country of birth. You're like, wait, this shit looks English, not watching that.
I don't turn northern, pan-northern when I put on an English movie. But yeah, I've been damaged far too many times watching British productions, whether it be television. I don't watch any English television. Forget that. Forget the BBC. What a joke. And yet every year I've got to pay for this stupid license. I hate them.
Okay, let's start with your rankings of the movies we watched from last place.
Me first.
Yeah.
Me. Right, rock bottom for me. Eloise. Suck it, Eloise. Number 2, Resurrection of Evil. And outright number 1, yeah! Estonia! River of Fear. Shall I give any context to the whole chanting Estonia? I don't think I should. I'll just leave it a secret.
If you know, you know.
Well, that'll leave me, you, and my mum, and some other random person.
Great. I'm quite shocked by your rankings, to be honest.
Well, how can you be shocked when those are the rankings?
No.
Those are the rankings.
I think, for me, it went...
Wrong.
River of Fear in last place.
But Estonia!
And then it was...
Are you a nationalist?
Eloise. And that puts Resurrection of Evil in the top.
My number 2, your number 1, but we've got completely different number 1s and bottom.
Yeah, where does that leave us?
Well, that leaves me. I've got love for Estonia, and you don't. But let's go into, my number 3, Eloise.
Okay. Eloise, where do you begin? Well, it's based around a haunted asylum.
As we've already said, this place actually
Eloise.
exists. It's apparently been torn down now recently. And you know that when a production comes out and says, oh yeah, we shot in the real place, that they're already... making up for the fact that they've made a really crap movie. And that's what happened here. A guy called Jacob... Well, actually, no, before we meet Jacob, a couple... No, I'm getting confused now with another movie. Resurrection of Evil.
Where are your notes? Where's your professionalism?
My notes are here. But so what's the beginning for you? Because I've gone straight into Jacob.
Yeah, when he's working or whatever and he gets the news that his dad has passed away.
Yeah. And he gets news that he's going to inherit his father's $1.2 million fortune.
And when he goes back home for like his dad's funeral and wake or whatever, although he misses the funeral, I think. Anyway, he goes back home, finds out about this, and he's got one of his old childhood mates, probably his best friend or something, and they're going out for drinks.
Again, you're skipping way ahead from where my notes are.
And
so let's just cut you off there, because what we've got shot on sight. We've also got Robert Patrick, the T-1000 himself from Terminator 2, the Liquid Metal Man. Right, he plays a evil doctor called like H.H. Geiger or something like this. And yeah, so we get the Doctor T-1000, and we've got a detective who is looking for someone, and one of them ends up being Jacob. And Jacob gets a call, like you say, saying his father has passed, about all that inheritance stuff.
Yeah.
So he goes to the lawyer, and he's told all this. So it's news to him, it's news to Jacob that his father has passed away.
Yeah.
So
but he doesn't seem to care. He clearly, in this situation, has no relationship
he doesn't
with his
care
dad.
too much. And secondly, as he's leaving the meeting with the lawyer, he's halfway out the door, and the lawyer says, "Oh, by the way, your father died by, slitting his own throat or something." And then Jacob says, "I'm sorry. I didn't know." I mean, of course you didn't know, you imbecile. You've just been informed that your father's dead in the first place. Of course you didn't know how he died. So he apologises for the lawyer telling him how his father died.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Bloody imbecile.
And then...
we then get to like Jacob going through some belongings in what must be his father's house, I've got to assume.
Yeah, he goes straight into his father. Oh, this was so strange. Yeah, he gets his father's like mansion estate thing, and he's wandering around just looking. First of all, I would be combing through every nook and cranny because I love just seeing what might be left in this old house. But
Nosy Parker.
He gets to one place, which is obviously where his dad did the deed, because there's still like just blood.
Fresh blood
everywhere. And I was thinking, is that how it really works? Is there no kind of cleanup after a death?
That's a good point. But what hit me more in this scene was when he's rifling through the belongings of his father, and it's in the dark. All of a sudden he's attacked by a man in a ski mask brandishing a straight razor. And of course, Jacob is scared the shit out of, but it's all right, because it's just his dog.
Psych!
It's his dog in a ski mask and a straight razor coming at him. And he reveals himself, takes off the ski mask. He's like, "Yo, you scared of a little straight razor?" And yes, I am scared of a man in the dark in a ski mask brandishing a freaking straight razor at me. But according to Dell, Jacob's best friend, this is a good idea for a prank. And then they have a little bro down. It's the first bro down of the movie. You get an early bro down between Dell and Jacob.
Yeah, we're brought into their relationship, which is clearly
I like to think about Dell
long-term.
sitting at home thinking, how can I scare Jacob? Oh, I know. I'd get my ski mask and this bladed weapon.
Yeah, and I also seem to remember
Genius
that
prank.
they like make insinuations that they have a less than clear past together, that they might
they
both
then go to
have
the
been
bar.
a bit naughty.
They go to the bar, and that's when we're introduced to, I believe her name was Pia, played by Eliza Dushku.
Yes,
she's the waitress. Yeah, the bartender
at this place. And can I ask you a question at this point? Because to me, the way that they were like interacting seemed like she had never met them and vice versa.
Yeah, well, because
right?
Jacob tries to shine her on at the bar, and she shuts him down by IDing him. Like, take that, little man. Like, you can't step to me and ask me out. I'm Eliza Dushku, and you're just some short fella. How old are you? Because you look about 12.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not 12. He manages to get served. He sits back down with Dell. And also, Dell's like, "Oh, good to see you ain't lost your game, player," or something to that effect. And it's a bit more of a bro down, but then it gets serious. It's serious bro talk, because it turns out that Dell, in his own words, is 20 G's in the hole. He's in the shit, yo.
Where is this 20 grand gone? Was it like drugs?
I was going to ask you, do you recall a reason as to why Dell is 20 G's in the hole?
No.
Because I don't, but I've got to imagine that, considering the way the rest of the movie goes, especially with Dell's character, that, like you say, it was probably a drug deal gone wrong, because Dell is black, so of course his idea of a good time is creeping up with his mate in a ski mask with a bladed weapon, threatening him, and now he's 20 G's in the hole. But it's all right. It's all right, because Jacob lets him know that he's about to walk into $1.2 million. Although,
so this is what I was going to say before you said to slow down, because I found this so strange. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not about having secrets from your friends and stuff, but just to be like, "Yo, I'm going to inherit this exact amount of money. Woohoo! Hey, I can bail you out." And he doesn't even know, like, usually things like that are going to take absolutely ages to go through all the like legal requirements and stuff, and he seemed like he needed it pronto.
Yeah.
He can't wait for it. That's kind of why
also,
everything happens.
I feel like Jacob has got excited by the prospect of 1.2 because really, this is America. He's going to be taxed at least 50% on that. So really, he's got 600 grand left, and now he's just given away another 20 of it. So he's got 580,000 left. That ain't going to go that far in this day and age. So again, the imbecilic behaviour from Jacob continues. But he's got his bro. Dell doesn't have to worry about his drug. Debt.
Does he though? Because the next time that he goes to visit his lawyer, what's he called again? You've literally been saying it the whole time.
Oh, what, the lead character,
Yeah.
the lead guy, Jacob.
Jacob, right. Jacob goes to the lawyer, and the lawyer's like, well, actually, there's a bit of a snag.
There's a hitch.
Turns out that, we don't have proof of death for your aunt. Now, Jacob's really surprised because he didn't even know he had an aunt. And it turns out that this aunt had been interred in the insane asylum, Eloise. And Eloise was since shut down.
But it's his
But
father's...
they didn't know whether or not she was alive or dead.
It's his father's fortune. Why has he got to go and retrieve any birth certificate? Beyond me. But why has he got to go and retrieve Aunt Genevieve's birth certificate to inherit his father's fortune?
Well, so this is why the whole thing kicks off into the storyline of it, because he basically gets told, in order to get this money within however many
A few months,
you need to find some kind of evidence of your aunt's passing. So, yeah, death certificate.
it would take too long to go through the proper channels for him to get his grubby mitts on his inheritance and give away 20 G's straight away to drug dealing Dell.
And then Dell is a bad influence as well, because he's like saying, well, we can't wait that long. Why don't we just go back to our old ways, break into Eloise, and just find the file for ourselves?
And again, you've just come at another checkpoint here. So we've got, ski mask blade attack, 20 G's in the hole. He also talks like some kind of shaft from the year 2000. And now he's breaking into places because Dell is black. and it will continue. But before
they get to the asylum,
I'm not sure if it's before, it's probably right today. Before they get to the asylum, there's also
weird.
a little bit where Jacob bumps into a hobo's cart after coming out of the administrative office. And it's not the first time, not the last time we've come across this hobo.
Gets it with his car when he's trying to back out.
Yeah, and he comes out, he's quite apologetic, but the hobo doesn't really respond
No.
at all. And then we have another bro down. And this time, we've got the good news now that the money's coming in. So they're not just in a bar anymore being shut down by Eliza Dushku. They're now sat in front of a roaring fire in fine leather armchairs, toasting to their good fortune, dog.
In Jacob's dad's house, I believe that is.
In Jacob's dad's house, yeah. Celebrating his death. Bye, Daddy. Hello.
Thanks, money.
1.2/$600/$580,000.
Can I get onto the next character, introduction bit? Because this is so bizarre to me.
Are you talking about after the roaring fire part? Mm-hmm. The geniuses, Jacob and Dell, they get on the internet.
Yeah.
And they start searching things about Eloise. And there's this guy called Scott Carters.
Okay, so this guy, Scott Carters, is clearly an Eloise maniac. He's got a website dedicated to it. And on this website, his contact details, so phone number, address, and with no fuss or ado, next thing you know, Jacob and Dell are in the car on their way to this person's house. And they're like, yeah, let's just call him on the way. As if they know this person. It's the middle of the night as well, I should add.
Yeah, they've done the classic internet search. Next stop, their house. So they get into Scott Carter's house. And it's dark. There's no light on, so they've got to use
why would you just walk into the
torches
house?
or whatever. Yeah, why would you? That's a good point. But why would you walk into the house? And then why would you stay in the house once you start seeing, clown ornaments and all these weird things laying about everywhere? Then they split up. And out of nowhere, amongst all this crap, appears a man-child. Man-child, Scott Carter's himself. Eloise expert.
Yeah, and all these weird things that you've been seeing around that are putting you on edge are clearly things that he's collected, not necessarily legally.
He's into the macabre.
His ventures into Eloise.
He shows both Jacob and Dell an old VHS video of Dr. T-1000, Robert Patrick. His actual name is H.H. Grease, the T-1000 doctor, of his macabre experiments from back in the day. And he informs them of, how much he knows about Eloise. Mm-hmm. But then it's not over there, because in comes Eliza Dushku, and it turns out that
Dun, dun, dun.
Scott is Eliza Dushku's brother.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a,
Oh God, you
a
just jogged
kind
my memory on
of
something.
Warren something about Mary kind of deal. Remember Cameron Diaz's character has a brother
Oh,
who
right.
wears earmuffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's obviously really protective of him, but within a short space of time, she's agreed that the four of them should all together go and break into the asylum records store. Great idea.
And once she decides that, she takes Jacob outside, and while they're gone, Scott sexually harasses Dell. He walks up to Dell and he's like, "Can I touch you?" And Dell looks down and he's like, "You can't touch me. And you ain't got no pants on. Go put your pants on."
Yeah.
So the first instant that Scott has got the chance to make his move in his undies, he's done it. So he's not to be trusted.
That was actually the only funny bit in this entire film, though, is when the other two are having a serious conversation and all you can hear in the background is Dell just being, "Put some pants on!"
Yeah.
It's silly but funny. Yeah, and then so again, the reason
Of
I
course,
asked you...
Scott is really excited to be going for the first time. Is it the first time? No, he's
No,
been there many
he's
a
been there
time.
loads.
But there's one place he hasn't been able to go. That's what I was going to say.
the files.
The annex.
That's it, where all the, like, unaccessible files are kept. But, yeah,
Just the ones they need.
The reason I asked you before, when they were in the bar, whether they knew the bartender... and vice
Eliza.
versa, and it seemed like they didn't. But then it
I
seemed
feel
at
like-
this point
yeah.
they almost do know each other. Like maybe they all kind of grew up
they've met
together
at the
or
bar.
something.
They've met at the bar now. You know,
Yeah,
he's asked her
so-
out. She's rejected him.
Now there's history.
He's in her house uninvited because they've broken in.
At
and
night
they're just milling about with her brother.
with a friend, with her brother who
So now it's time to get to Eloise.
is very
So
strange.
they get to Eloise. I think they're in Eloise now. It might just be the administrative building again. It's like rifling through just more files in the dark.
Yeah, no, they find the annex quite
Files
easily.
and files and files. Yeah, there's not much of a build up considering that
The problem is-
Scott really has built it up.
The problem is that the annex is clearly just completely untouched and unorganised, and there's just like a shit ton of files. So they all kind of split up to go and look.
Scott wanders off by himself because he's smart, and then there are all kinds of just general hauntings in the hallway for Eliza Dushku / Pia. And Scott sees some photos of himself being tortured, which is kind of like predicting his future, considering how he ends up.
Yeah, well, that's like right before he gets attacked by these like ghost beings. But I think what is supposed to have kicked off the whole haunting to the level it went to is when they're walking through the place and Scott sees a rack of skulls on like shelves, and he's obviously told to like don't touch. Oh no, it's ash, people's ashes, not skulls, people's ashes. But of course he has to have one for his collection, so when they're not looking he goes back, takes one off the shelf to put in his bag, and another one just falls on the ground, disrespected these ashes, and things just go from there.
The good news is, though, they do find Genevieve's records. I'm not sure if they get the birth certificate, but they definitely get Genevieve's records. So they know they're onto something. And while they're onto something, as you say, they've all split.
Well, Scott's missing this whole time. Because...
Yeah, Scott's missing, and he ends up in a bad way after seeing those photos of himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happens in the photos essentially starts happening in his reality.
That's what I said 1 minute ago.
Yeah, we're saying the same thing.
It predicted his future, and it's a gruesome end for Scott, considering how excited he was to be in the Eloise Asylum in the first place. Now, it done him dirty.
Oh, I think this might be a good point to mention as well. The reason that Scott is supposedly so obsessed with it is that Scott and what was the bartender called?
Pia.
Scott and Pia's mum,
Eliza Dushku,
worked as a nurse there when it was still operational, and one day she just like disappeared, essentially never came home from work, which Pia took very badly, and she's like going on telling her sob story about how she looked after her 6-year-old brother from the age of 3.
Yeah.
So she was raising her brother when she was 3 years old, apparently.
No, I mean, kind of the way it happens is Jacob and
So
Pia are
dumb.
just walking down, a nice, quaint, pathway, and she's like, yeah, I had to bring up my brother and my mother and my father died, and I survived World War II and I survived Iwo Jima, and then he's like, wow, that must be really hard for a 4-year-old. So she's been through just a catalogue of torture throughout her life.
And she also said, she was
But
like,
survived it
yeah,
at 4.
when our mum just never came home again, I chose to be really, really mad at her and then just erase her from my memory. And Scott does the opposite. But yeah, I thought that was, again, a really, really weird reaction for a 3 or 4-year-old. Your mum just disappears, never comes home. And you're just like, I'm mad at her. I'm going to erase her from my memory. I was like, I'm pretty sure you'd be upset for a little while.
Just good character writing.
It was bizarre.
When they're in the asylum, you say they all scoot off alone. We've forgotten about Dell. Dell, who's already broken in to the administrative building.
Yeah.
And Eloise? No, not... Is he broken into Eloise?
They're in the annex.
So he's broken into that as well. Now he sees a locked door with glass pane on it, and he decides he's got to get into there as well. So he smashes the glass pane, unlocks the door, goes to a medicine cabinet, and like you say, there are things in this place kind of untouched. And in this medicine cabinet are just loads of drugs. Now, anyone knows that if a hospital becomes abandoned and it's full of drugs, that place is going to be ransacked within hours by down and outs. Nothing's going to be left. But what Dell finds in the drug cupboard is liquid LSD. So where he's punched through the window pane, he's cut his arm, he's cut his hand. So he decides to take the LSD, the liquid LSD, and rub it into his wound. Now, we now cut back to Jacob, who's still in the administrative room looking through the files. Up shows Dell, and he's starting to feel a little bit woozy, and he
also has
might
no idea
be
that it was LSD
hallucinating. No, even though I'm pretty sure it just says LSD on the label
he was just
in
like,
large
look,
letters.
some clear liquid, that'll do.
So now he's hallucinating. So the writers are thinking, right, this is Dell. He's hallucinating. What can he do, which is really cool while he's hallucinating? I know. Let's give him a gun, and he can shoot up the place. He can shoot at his friends and just shoot willy-nilly a gun because Dell is black, so of course he's gun-toting. And then he runs off, and it's not long after this that Dell meets, he meets his fate, meets his maker, and of course, he's black, so he can't swim, so he drowns. I mean, why didn't they just give him a plastic Viking helmet and a chain with a giant clock on the end of it? This was such a brain-dead movie. Not the full shilling. What was this writing of the character Dell? I'm just going to assume that they're completely unaware when they're like filming this and writing. It's like, yeah, this will do. This'll do.
Oh, really pissed you off, didn't it?
It didn't piss me away. I'm just kind of just more exasperated at how it got past any level of tick off. Check that. Yeah. Check that.
Well,
yeah, he's in debt. Yeah, we'll get that. Yeah, he knows how to work a gun, break into places. He can't swim. No.
In the meantime, though,
it's completely
Scott's
brain dead.
death is more interesting.
He's better
than
off
that.
dead. He's better off dead.
He gets... Basically, they give him one of those procedures, like a frontal lobotomy or something, where they stick a chisel up through his eye socket and just, smash it in and wiggle it around.
When he is drowned, there's a lot of dead bodies around him as well, so at least that was a half-decent touch.
What, Dell?
Dell, yeah. Dell boy.
You just can't let it go.
No. Can't let any of it go, because it's from the first time he's introduced to his last seconds on the screen. It's all beyond cliche.
So the next weird thing in this film is that we get it from the moment Scott is kind of attacked by these spirits and the photos and whatnot, and then it gets progressively more and more so, especially towards the end when we've got Pia and Jacob left.
I'm not at the end yet.
Yeah, but let me just finish for once. That could have been something so different to what I actually meant. Let me finish for once.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so when it's just the two of them left, the reality of, the current time in this rundown asylum and the past, I guess, or some alternate reality where it's still functioning as it was, seem to just intersect willy-nilly.
Yeah, intertwine, yeah.
And the characters, are brought into this alternate reality.
It's the alternate reality in where Eloise is no longer abandoned and it's still a working hospital or whatever.
And the other people there can see and touch and hurt them and stuff. It's not like they're just seeing something from back in time.
There was one particular vision.
It's current.
There was one particular vision that the main cast have. So we've got Jacob and the rest in this room, and it's a room full of doctors and patients and, for some reason, Greeks, classic Greek god statue things. And the doctors are making the patients fight with each other. and they're also dancing with catatonic patients into like
Yeah.
20s style music. That's a nice idea, but it didn't work in terms of the scene because our characters have also seen pictures of themselves around this room. And as all this is happening, you know, they're in disbelief at what they're seeing. So of course,
Are they really though?
they
I
are
feel
in
like they're taking it really in
they
their
are in
stride.
disbelief because of Jacob. If you watch, he's seeing all this and he's just going. He just doesn't stop blinking. That's Mr. Chase Crawford, everyone, and scene.
Well, personally, I think they took quite well to it, you know, considering you're suddenly in this alternate universe.
Yeah,
To the
but-
point where even Pia goes and manages to find a nurse's outfit, so she's going incognito around the place.
Before she gets back to, before she's incognito, there's a scene where Dr. T-1000, I assume back in time again, he's in the operating theatre where all the students are looking down on him, and he has Eliza Dushku, Pia, gagged.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a multitude of injections, like really violent injections stabbed into
you
her.
just completely jogged my memory on something. So his whole thing, this doctor, was that by exposing people to their phobias, that it will get rid of them. And it's an existing thought, but I think the way he did it is obviously it's supposed to be 'cause it's a horror movie, but over the top. So yeah, Pia's greatest fear is needles, and so this horrible nurse proceeds to, well, violently attack her with these needles, really, to the point where all the like visiting doctors are walking out in disgust.
So as I said, that scene looked to me as it was back in time again because Dr. T-1000 is walking about. Then the next scene is then Pia pushing, as you said, Jacob around in a wheelchair in what is still back in time. So she's just been let go from this multiple
She
injections
manages to.
and she's fine now.
She pulls herself out of it. Yeah, I mean there was a lot of blood taken, a lot of injections, but she pulls herself out of the situation and like attacks the woman or something, gets away. Yeah, and then also she was like bleeding, but she puts on this white nurse's outfit and nothing is visible.
She's
But, you
she's
know-
evading security, and she
Yeah.
she drops Jacob off into a room.
Okay,
and wanders off.
She heard clearly when the doctor was explaining where Jacob's going to be, because Jacob was like under something, so he was passed out. They put him in one of those places where they keep like the corpses, and his greatest phobia is that he's claustrophobic, so that's why they've put him in there. And she heard this before she got her needle thing, so she's gone to save him. And yeah, she's trying to get them out of the building.
But actually, before she tries to get him out of the building, and you know the big climax, as I said, when she's wheeling around, she drops Jacob off, and he looks across the hospital into another room, and he sees himself get born.
Yeah.
And then his mother dies, so now there are two of him in the hospital, and Dushku's still walking around, and it turns out that Jacob's the T-1000 son. The T-1000 spawned Jacob.
Yeah, so this, again, turns out the naughty doctor, who's already got, you know, dastardly ways, has also had his way with at least one of the patients, clearly, because it's his baby. And after she gives birth, we see the nurse, turns out that's Pia's character's mum when she was working there.
It's all connected.
And the nurse is like, I won't let your child grow up in this place. Don't worry, I won't let it happen. And so she takes the baby and puts it in a box. And then she gets her child, Pia, as like a 5-year-old or something. Oh no, she can't be. She must have been 3, right? Because that's
4.
when her mum was still alive.
It's 4.
Gives baby little Pia the box and is like, bring this to the man outside. And it turns out the man outside is who Jacob thought was his recently deceased father, but it's actually his uncle, and his uncle took him in. But this again doesn't make sense. One thing quickly. In this scenario, clearly, the uncle as well, ex-dad, knows that this is like illegal and blah, blah, blah. He's very keen. You see him like opening his arms wide when he sees the box coming, like, yes, give me my sister's baby for me to raise. And then there's never any explanation as to why, at the point that this film starts, Jacob just doesn't care that who he thought his dad was dead. Like, clearly something has ruined that relationship. And
Do you think it was
I'm
anything
gonna
to
put
do
on
with
Jacob.
Jacob being a twat in the lawyer's office as well? He's just a general bit of a moron.
yeah, maybe it was his delinquency.
Maybe his dad couldn't take, you know, how much of a moron his son was, and his idiot friend. Like you say, when they exit the hospital, then it goes. Eliza Dushku thinks that her and Jacob are going to escape together. She managed to get back out into the real world. He gets halfway out, but he's pulled back in by the hobo. So we've seen the hobo for the third time. So this is the third hobo appearance, and I don't know why it's the hobo that's gone to get him. It's almost like he's a hobo henchman. He's been there planted to
really
haunt Jacob's
weird. It's
world.
not really explained, but something.
And then we are taken back to the beginning, because I just remember now the beginning opens with the current day, and then we're shown what happens before this.
Right.
And it's Eliza Dushku Pia. She's now locked up in like an insane asylum, and she's being asked questions about Jacob, and she doesn't answer. She's silent, and then we flash to Jacob, and he's been gotten to by Daddy T-1000, Finn, pretty much.
I guess so. Yeah. You can
what
watch it
else
for yourself
happens?
if you're interested in more. Well, I was just going to say again, the alternate realities blending with the cops and the...
Well,
Like, you're in present day when Pia first meets a cop who's going to check things out, and then by the time she comes back out and sees another cop, it's in the, like, alternate universe again, and it's a whole mishmash. It's strange. But yeah, I didn't like the characters. The relationships were unclear. There wasn't really anything scary.
no, not at all.
Yeah, I don't know if there's much positive I can give to this one. It was by no means the worst thing we've seen, but that's hardly a compliment nowadays.
A part of it was one of the worst things I've seen, because, you know, I've gone through cliche characters before, and this one hits a nail on the head, much like others that I've previously mentioned.
Yeah, what did you make of the character of Scott as well, and the performance of that?
Well, I'm lost for words.
Is it better or worse than John Travolta in The Fanatic?
Well, John Travolta's performance is stratospheric, so it's kind of hard to compare that to anything.
Right. I think that is that movie done then.
Scott's character was just as ridiculous as Dell's.
The whole thing was stupid.
You put it number 2.
Yeah.
I put it rock bottom.
It's because my last place one makes...
Despite Dr.
no sense to me
T-1000,
whatsoever.
Dr. Robert Patrick, evil Dr. Robert Patrick.
So which one are we doing next? Are we doing Resurrection of Evil or River of Fear?
Resurrection.
The two titles sound quite nice together, don't they?
Resurrection, yeah, because it's the r sound. No.
So which one are we doing?
Resurrection of
Oh,
Evil.
is that why you were saying it over and over?
Resurrection of Evil. My number 2. We're going in my order.
Yeah, this one was my first place.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe it. I can't believe this is the first place. It was the first one we watched, and I was like, surely it can only get better from here, because this is so stupid.
By the way, Resurrection of Evil, from the producer of Saw. And I'll get back to that.
I want to start actually kind of with that title.
At the opening. Oh, okay, title. Even
Yeah.
before the opening.
Because, well, actually, no, I guess I have to summarise a bit to explain why the title is so strange to me for this. Essentially, really boiled down, there's a house where people who are recovering or recovered addicts can go and live for free as long as they stay, clean or whatever.
As long as they
that might
behave
mean.
themselves.
And lo and behold, when people do fall off the wagon, they are gotten rid of. Now, Resurrection of Evil really makes it taken to a whole nother level. So if you, like an alcoholic...
A gambler.
Or we have a hooker in there as well. I didn't know that was, an addiction, but I guess nymphomania or something. I don't know.
I'm not sure if it's just all
But apparently
addictions.
this
It's just kind of vices.
Evil. That, to me, that's what I took from it, that they're saying, unless they mean the killer's resurrected. I don't know, not
Maybe
really.
the producer of Saw is like a hardcore religious zealot, and
Yeah, that's
his
kind of the
views
vibe I
were put
got.
through the character Eleanor.
Because otherwise, they were almost trying to make it seem like these people deserved it.
You've really put too much thought into this, but congratulations. I didn't think that much about the title, which apart from just thinking, good title for the wrong movie.
Yeah, definitely. So where did you want to start with this one at the
I just
beginning
want
of
to
the
go.
story?
Yeah, it opens. We got a guy and a girl, Danielle and Scott. Danielle played by Danielle Harris. We've mentioned before. Everyone knows who she is. They're in their apartment building. Scott gets his eyes kind of gouged out. We don't see it. It's off screen. Then she goes into an elevator, and she's lifted into the air and also dies, and is then followed in after her death by the janitor. Then we're introduced to our main character, Jackie.
Oh, the janitor goes to clean up the blood, by the way,
obviously.
just casually.
And Jackie is on the phone to Detective Tim, and they're talking about Danielle and Scott because she's friends with Danielle. And now that she's missing, of course, Jackie moves into Danielle's old apartment in the Havenhurst building, which, by the way, is also another title for this movie, Havenhurst.
Okay, that would make... I think Havenhurst would be a much better title considering what happens. Yeah, so even straight away when we see this prelude to the goings-on at Havenhurst with all these people disappearing and, you know, she's running away from some unseen threat, which then appears...
The first scary thing we see is when she first gets into Havenhurst, uses the elevator, and it opens and a kid goes by on a skateboard. You know, that took my breath away. So you're already aware that this is a grimy... You don't want to be here. There's a kid on a skateboard.
Anyway, what I was going to say was that it seemed quite supernatural. It seemed almost like House on the Hill, House on Haunted Hill, because it was like the house was...
Don't compare this to
alive in itself. That's what I thought they were going to be going for from that first opening. No.
I say after we get the unscrupulous skateboarder, like you've already mentioned, we then see the hooker, and she's riding a client. And we know that she's a hooker because the camera pans to the side table and there's some cash there. So that's our first clue that this character is a lady of the night.
And we also see a shot where it goes out from what is clearly a hidden CCTV cam. Mm-hmm. So it turns into that sort of black and white footage.
You know, that's dirty Eleanor, because the next thing we see is then the hooker being evicted, and Jackie witnesses this. And while she's witnessing this, she's then introduced to Eleanor, the house head honcho.
Yes, the owner of the place, who likes to get to know all of her residents, and so invites her up, as you said, for tea and to get to know each other.
She describes the place as for where people come to cleanse themselves and then re-enter into the world anew. And everyone's allowed to stay there as long as they want, as long as they behave. Because she's well aware of Jackie's addictions to, you know,
she's read her case files
dreaded
and
scotch.
Stuff. Yeah, she's read all her stuff, and we get clear indications that, you know, she used to have a child, and then somehow she's been separated from her kid because of her alcoholism. So
Jackie also asks about Danielle and Scott. You know, they were the previous tenants, and now, of course, she's there now. But Eleanor's pretty vague about that, so she kind of skips that question. And then the handyman guy turns out to be a guy called Ezra, who is Eleanor's son. Yes,
and he's a creepy type.
Yeah,
he's a weird type.
Now that Jackie has moved into this apartment block, you know, she's supposed to be down on her luck, so she starts a job waitressing, and the first thing she's told there is "Welcome to hell." And I guess any kind of job where you're exposed to the general public is a kind of a hell in itself, really. But luckily, after the dreaded first shift, Detective Tim shows up.
No, it's right at the beginning of her shift. She does like...
Is it at the beginning?
She pours one coffee after getting out from behind the bar, and then she sees him sat there, and she's like, right, let me just go and
she's
chinwag
already
with him.
slacking. She's not doing herself any favours. She's in a tip-based industry.
Yeah, he leaves her
Service is paramount. That's because Detective Tim, you know, he's a good guy. Just wants to get to the bottom of everything.
No, I wanted to know what do you, throughout the film then, consider their relationship to be? Because it's never actually spelled out to us.
As in, you know, the history of their relationship?
Yeah, do you think they're like just acquaintances, they're friends, they're ex-lovers? Like, what did you get from this?
It was, well, it wasn't acted this way, but I can only glean from the original phone call, when we first get introduced to them both, that is the be-all and end-all of their relationship, essentially. That she's made a phone call to him, or vice versa, talking about Danielle, can you go and investigate this?
Well, no, that's just dumb, because we know that he's doing all this stuff just out from his own time, off his own back. Like, it's not his job that he's doing this for. He's helping someone he cares about.
Wait, so he's not, you know, he's not being paid for his time?
Not on this thing, no. He's
doing
her a favour.
Tim.
Yes, but don't you remember? He even goes into the office and he's like asked one of his colleagues to give him some info, and then he's like, oh, by the way, this isn't like official, so don't tell anyone.
Well, it shouldn't get to that. There's been a murder, so it should be official business.
But they don't know there's been a murder. As far as they know, she's just just not contacting people. They don't know where she's gone. I mean, she's an ex-addict, so, she's
Tim is
obviously
like
not to be
Batman,
trusted.
but in a suit. Because he's just doing stuff on the side which no one else knows about to try and solve things.
I think
Well,
they're either ex-lovers or just friends, but he definitely wants to get with her.
in the grand scheme of things, of the story of the movie, the way it's resolved and everything, I don't think it really matters for how these two know each other, really, does it?
No, I just thought it was interesting. Again, I find relationships in a lot of the films we're watching, when they're not very good films, it's like, it's so unclear, and it bothers me.
Yeah, well, she's not going to last very long as a waitress, so she keeps running off to Detective Tim every time. So then we cut back to Paula. Paula is the name of the prostitute. She's walking through the hallway, and, we've already seen a pile of cash on her bedroom side table. Now she's wearing leopard print, so now I know for sure that she is in fact a hooker, because we've got the money on the side table and the leopard print attire. So that clarifies that finally 100% for me. And she dies. She gets battered around by a unseen entity, and Jackie hears it happening.
I don't remember if it was this bit. There's one bit early on in this film when, whatever entity it is offing someone. And I really liked the way they were doing it at first, in that they weren't showing anyone, but then at one point they showed just the very edge of some sort of clothing. So again, you still can't tell really what's going on. But then throughout the film, the more they show of the killer, I was like, lost me.
That's par for the course, really, isn't it?
Sucked, because I really liked that shot when you just had a tiny hint of who this person was without giving anything away, really.
As I said, so the hooker's being offed by this unseen entity. Jackie hears all the commotion, so she goes up to the hooker's apartment, starts snooping around, and little Sarah's in there. A little girl. Remember the little girl?
I remember the little girl. I thought they met in the elevator.
Jackie meets in the elevator, and now
okay.
she's already met her in the elevator, and it turns out she knows of Danielle, who previously worked there.
Liked her, apparently.
Yeah.
And she lives in a house that's dysfunctional, so she's got like a foster mum or something, and her foster mum's
Tammy.
boyfriend is a wrong un. Don't worry though, because the little girl is kind of in the know, and she's the one who actually tells our main girl from the start, just be good, just follow the rules.
Yeah, Sarah's pretty ominous with that, behave yourself, or
her storyline as well was super
consequences.
duper obvious.
Oh yeah,
but when we get to it doesn't make sense. So yeah, she's in this horrible house, but like I said, don't worry. She's been a good girl, and the two adults soon get dealt with by the house. The house?
We should have mentioned just previous to this, we've also seen that Jackie is in group as well. But it's okay, because group wasn't so bad, because Detective Tim shows up. And this time she goes to Detective Tim and she asks him to not just continue investigating the Danielle Scott death, but also add on to that in your own spare time, which you're not getting paid for, which you just informed me. Can you now look into this third death of this hooker? So he's a detective with a heart of gold. He'll take any case. He's like a pro bono detective.
Well, just for her. That's why I'm saying I wonder what this relationship is supposed to be.
Or maybe he's trying to make it a relationship.
Oh gosh, another really weird thing. You mentioned this little girl, and I just mentioned that, the two adults who are supposed to be looking after her are both...
Tammy and the disgusting father.
Both gotten rid of.
Yeah.
And then our main girl is like...
Well, are we just going to
are we
just going to skip over how they're eliminated?
No, you can go into that in a second. Just let me finish this. Our main girl is just like, oh, I'll take the little girl into my possession. She can live with me. And even, finally the cop, who, apparently will just bend over backwards for this woman, he's like, well, I don't think that's legal.
He is kind of just trying to save her from Eleanor's grasp, though, isn't she? Eleanor's like, come with me. I want a daughter.
Yeah, but that wouldn't have been legal either, so it makes no sense.
Yeah, but she's evil, so she can give the evil eyes to Detective Tim with the heart of gold. And, he's not going to be able to come up against that, is he? No, as you've mentioned, Sarah has a terrible home life.
Yeah.
So Tammy, I believe, is also a waitress. And Sarah and Jackie have had one of their recent rendezvous where they're rifling through an apartment. And we see Sarah get home. Tammy's about to leave, but as she's about to leave, the dad gets home and he is drunk. How can we tell he's drunk? Because there's some superb drunk acting. And it's clear that this man has, you know, the evilest of intentions towards Sarah. He's, I guess, her stepfather. And
He's just the boyfriend of her
Tammy
foster mum,
Tammy can
so-
see what his intentions are, and still she decides, no, I have to go and do my shift, and I'm going to leave Sarah here, you know, at your mercy. And of course, the apartment building, Havenhurst, doesn't like this. While she's gone, the dad,
The man.
the man tries to have his way with her, but luckily he gets stabbed in the hand. And we've also been privy to this secret compartment in the flat where Sarah runs to, where other people can't get to her, and that keeps them out. Tammy returns home, and while she's been gone, the stepfather decides to go to bed after being stabbed in the hand, and all of a sudden there's like hydraulics underneath his bed, and it raises and it raises and it raises, and he can't hold on until he's dropped into a trap door.
Well, like I said, this house is clearly like a robot AI house, right? That's the only
Hydraulic
explanation,
bed.
because there just happen to be perfectly invisible trapdoors all over the place in the perfect spots, hydraulics under the beds that no one knew were there. I mean, it's the perfect house to off people.
So Tammy, as you know, she's come home, she's seen all this, and I think she's been told by Sarah that, you know, you've broken the rules and he's broken all the rules. So Tammy investigates the house, and she can no longer see her, you know, her dirty spouse. So next thing we see, she's in like an underground dark basement place, and that's where she sees her disgusting spouse. And he's now on a contraption where he's been sawed in half. So at this point, you know, producer of Saw has stepped in to the production, said, hang on, we've got to stop all this ghostly apartment stuff. We get down into a dingy basement where someone has managed to cobble together some, you know, devices of torture for our cast to die on, and we need to see them, you know, cut in half. That's what we need to see, because me, as a producer of Saw, the worldwide phenomenon, I know what people want to see, and that's people sawed in half.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with, you know, the pretty good story of Saw. People just want to see saws.
He wasn't the only one down there either. I think we're like shown quite a few like decomposing.
It's
bodies,
Tammy's
and
turn, because now not only
there's like a whole bunch. Clearly, this has been going on a while.
now we're down
basically.
here in the shadows. We see this baldy maniac, this super pale baldy maniac in the shadows, and he kind of like carves up Tammy's face, leaves her a bit. She's got all these holes in her face and stuff like that. And I think that's a Saw producer at it again. Is like, now, you know, we'll do her like this. And then there's a dirty
We paid
basement.
the special effects people. Let's use them.
In the meantime, while those two have been offed, as I said, Jackie and Sarah keep milling about other people's apartments and rifling through all their stuff. They've gone into
Well, they're trying to figure out where these people have gone to.
yeah, and they've seen this apartment, which is a mess. So they go and get Detective Tim. Like, Detective Tim will believe us.
There's blood everywhere.
But they bring Detective Tim, and what's happened? The apartment is pristine,
Spotless.
and they've got Eleanor, the landlady, in the room, probably with Ezra as well. And Eleanor is none too pleased about this report from Jackie and Sarah.
Yeah, she's not used to the police getting involved. She's like, what are you doing? Look, everything's pristine. Which, again, when we come to the unravelling of this story, this is another one of the things that makes no sense. Do you know... I mean, you know how this story unravels. And I'm just thinking the amount of time it takes for them to get the policeman to come back. You start, when they leave the apartment, with a trashed, bloodied up, huge apartment that's just in a state. And by the time they bring him back, it's spotless.
Well, as the, you know, seasoned horror connoisseur would know, anytime there's a trashed, bloody apartment in a horror movie and they want to get the law involved to show them, it's always going to end up pristine when they bring the law there.
Yeah, again, that's supernatural though. That's like an AI house. It's like self-cleaning and wants to kill you.
There are some. Is the apartment magical? Is Eleanor magical? Is Ezra magical? Is the baldy son magical? Because
No.
you've got the hydraulic bed and a trap door.
I know.
He's not the only person to be trapdoored
so stupid.
either.
And then, of course, she...
Well, hang on. Let's get back to the actual narrative of the storyline.
when she decides to try and bait the house.
No. I was going back to, you know, no one will believe Jackie. So, of course, what does she do? She returns to the dreaded drink.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. She
Yeah.
baits the house.
She gets the
She's
12-year-old Scotch.
Everyone who... And she's desperate. She's still trying to find Jackie this
I
whole
consider
time.
it more baiting Eleanor, but you know.
Well,
Eleanor
it
is the
is.
house.
That's how it turns out.
Yeah. So
But
she's hit the Scotch. So she's trash on Scotch. But it's okay because the next morning Sarah is there to baby her. And, you know, she even makes her breakfast. She makes her breakfast and they both sit down. And then Jackie, sitting with Sarah, eating breakfast, says, I miss this. And Sarah's like, what? Bad pancakes? Yeah. It's a touching, wholesome moment.
Kayla.
To see that Jackie is not just a drunk, she's also missing her deceased child.
Yeah, I mean, did we find out by now that her child's deceased? She
yeah,
got
we'd
in a
already-
drunk
but
driving
in terms of
accident.
the movie,
Oh,
yeah.
also, the flashback of her is like having coffee, but it's just pure alcohol before the school run. And then she's like staggering around her car.
Very irresponsible.
And still thinks it's a great idea to get behind the wheel. I mean, that is stupid.
Yeah, she is stupid. So they have their pancakes. And the next thing you know, as far as I'm concerned, they're in a laundry room. They're trapped in a laundry room, but they find a secret doorway by banging a stick on a light switch. Sarah gets a stick and she bangs a light switch and it reveals this secret door into the saw-like tunnels.
That was brilliantly done. She knew exactly where that was, didn't she?
Yeah, just get the stick and tap it.
But also, we see more of that sort of CCTV style footage.
They're
and we
snooping
hear
about.
Eleanor,
They're snooping about again, looking at eviction notices in a drawer.
We hear Eleanor say to Ezra, you know, no, this won't do at all, after she's seen her drinking the scotch. And then, they're being
kept in the
chased,
laundry room, but they find a
essentially.
secret passageway out of the laundry room. And while they're in this basement type saw place, saw dwelling, they see newspaper clippings all over the wall of a Holmes and Mudgett and 200 dead in House of Evil being Havenhurst. And they put two and two together and decide that Eleanor is Eleanor Mudgett. And she's been, you know, keeping the Mudgetts out of the grasp of the law.
Yeah, I also found this really weird. 'Cause
Mudgett.
with all those clippings, it seemed like that was kind of something that happened in the past. Not like distant past, but maybe let's say 30 years or something. It seemed kind of...
Although didn't Mr. Mudgett have like a tash like
Yeah,
we could do
it
this
looked
too?
pretty
Yeah, I was thinking
old
more like, you know,
school.
1930s, 1920s.
Okay, so it definitely didn't look like it was recent. But then I think what they were suggesting was that it turns out Eleanor has two sons, Ezra and her other son, who is the baldy that you mentioned.
The bald maniac.
And isn't that supposed to be the one in the articles? Or are they saying like that's the kid? Or...
Well, the bald maniac was way too young and in shape to be, you know, Mr. Tash Mudgett.
So do you think that's like the son and it was Eleanor's husband who is this serial killer and now she's keeping it on in the family tradition?
There wasn't, like it's like you're getting at, there wasn't much, if any, explanation as to the bald guy and what history he has apart from just being Eleanor's son. So I don't really think much more about it because the filmmakers didn't think much more about it.
Again, so now that we've revealed this, I want to just point out again the things that are just so confusing to me, that this is supposedly just three completely human people from a family who've decided to take, you know, what they regard as sin or bad behaviour into their own hands, and that's how they justify him being a torturer or something. But that means that they're responsible for doing all that spick and span cleaning in a short amount of time, without, by the way, leaving like wet patches and stuff of where you've cleaned the blood off, or, you know, just no indication.
Eleanor's got them under her thumb.
They've got all
on her
these
control.
like trapdoors built. Oh, and there's also this whole weird thing mentioned at one point that the rooms like change. They physically change. There'll be a door there one day, and then it
you're
won't be
again
anything
just
the next
summarising everything
day.
and
Yeah.
missing out very important parts of the movie.
Am I?
Extremely important. So when they're down in the basement again and they find the Mudgett clippings, what do? They call Officer Tim. And they're like, Tim, I know you don't believe us about the apartment, but we found this basement now with clippings. So Tim, Detective Tim, can you take more time out of your busy schedule and get to us? So Tim comes, and in the meantime, Eleanor has taken Sarah into her possession. And, and she says that she doesn't like addicts, prostitutes, or paedophiles. Eleanor, she hates them all, wants them all gone. And she taunts Jackie over her dead child. And taunts her, saying that you will never get out of this house in one piece, if at all. Yeah.
Ice cream man's here. Should we take a break?
Tim's on his way. Bald maniac then trapdoors Jackie. It's another trapdoor. She's been trapdoored, and he's now in pursuit of her and Sarah. And Baldy is down in the dingy basement. And once again, we get the producer of Saw strikes again. Because not only is he a bald maniac, he's now a bald maniac with a saw strapped to his hand. So that's how he can decimate people now. So again, he's like, don't you know who I am? I'm the producer of Saw. Now, can we get an actual Saw into this? Yeah, people know me. They know me through Saws, and people love Saws. You see the box office of Saw, we need to get Saw into this movie, and we'll be quids in. So that's what we get. He gets his way.
So they clean all that stuff. They've built all these trapdoors. They're somehow responsible for just like drywalling and moving doors and building hydraulics under beds that lead into the perfectly placed trapdoor.
This is the producer of Saw. Have you seen the Saw movies? You can just rent, I assume, a giant, part of the underground and just use it to concoct traps to get your enemies in. And this is what's happened here. So like you say, this time they've added hydraulics.
So just to clarify, the house is not an AI robot. It's not supernatural.
No, it's the producer of Saw.
3 people are behind this.
It's the producer of Saw.
They've also managed to do away with a lot of people without any questions being asked, apparently. So she's the first person who's been like, I knew someone that lived here who's just disappeared off the face of the earth. I wonder what's going on. But yeah, right towards the end, she's obviously succumbed to try and bait Eleanor. She's succumbed to her alcoholic ways, as we mentioned. So she's being chased now. She's got to be offed. So Baldy is behind her. And then right towards the end, I think she does die. She dies, right?
You tell me.
Pretty sure she gets killed. But anyway, we then see Sarah, the little girl, in the apartment with Eleanor and the 2 sons. And Eleanor is like, so, little Sarah, now that you know everything our family entails, do you still want to be part of it? And of course Sarah goes, yeah. So this was really obvious for ages coming on that Sarah was going to be involved in the evil side of things. I thought that was pretty clear setup. But then when you watch the way that she interacts with our main character and tries to save her throughout the running away and stuff, it makes no sense.
Well, just get to a very important part again. When they're down in the dingy Saw basement, the baldy maniac has Jackie tied up and he's about to saw her with his saw-like contraption, probably thought of by the producer of Saw, who also produced this movie. And then Sarah just tells him, stop! And he just stops. He just stops for no reason, just because Sarah's told him. Sarah manages to escape, and that's when Jackie gets trapdoored. But he's just been told to stop, and he just does. Mm-hmm. So he's a very obedient. Maybe that's Eleanor overtraining him. So anytime he hears stop or go, start, he'll do that. So maybe this is incredibly smart writing.
Ish, don't think so.
Yeah, and Eleanor, she gets her way. Jackie is tied to a gurney at the end, and she is sawed. She gets the saw treatment, and we get the torture porn, because we can't end it any other way. Because it's the producer of Saw.
I think you've made that clear. And
I think he should have made it clearer that he was involved in proceedings. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known.
There's not really much else to add for this one, as far as I'm concerned. I've said my piece. This was my number 1, and it was pretty poor. So, yeah.
Number 3, Eloise, was piss poor. This one was a step above that. It's not saying much. There is one good movie left, though. Hailing from the one and only Estonia! River of Fear. Now, I would say, in the history of I Know What You Watched Last Week, when we've come to European productions, inevitably it doesn't ever finish bottom place. If you remember Tolpa, the Italian movie, you might have put it bottom, but I put it number 1 because I'm a fan of the European arts, and Estonia much like Hungary, Kazakhstan, Russia have added to this.
This is another one with awful dubbing. I mean, they didn't pay these voiceover actors any money by the looks of it, because it sounds terrible.
If you're making a foreign movie and you want your film dubbed into English, I can do a better job than all of these people. I'll give you a very competitive rate. I could do multiple voices. I've also got Karen here who could do, a few voices herself. Easy. Better than this anyway. Better than this, and better than that Hungarian one, better than the other.
And again, I always
dubbed.
find, when we watch stuff that has been dubbed, first of all, it's really hard to, for me at least, to rate the performances, because when you can't hear their actual voice and the tone, and you've got this other person's interpretation of the voice coming on top of it, it's like, I don't know, they could be crap, they could be brilliant. It's just impossible to tell. Nothing they were physically doing, though, was, off-putting.
I felt like their physical performance was all pretty good. It's just, like you say, the dubbing makes it hard to tell, which is something I enlightened you about in previous episodes, being the auteur that I am, that you couldn't really tell how good the acting was in these.
Yeah, I wouldn't have come to that conclusion myself.
These dub movies, yeah. So just once again, enriching the lives of many. Where do we go from here? So our main guy, Andreas, one of the first things that pops out about him, and it's really you had the big reaction to it, is we just had a retail scene where someone's buying some boots. Andreas is in the car driving himself to this destination, and he starts singing along in his car. He's like, whoop, 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 whoop.
No, that's not even the first bit. You're jumping ahead now, but yeah, that bit was great. It's so weird. I also want to know if that, was that the dub-over voice or his?
Was that,
because that was some
the
high-pitched
Estonian,
singing.
the Freddie Mercury? That's what I want to know.
No, before we even get that, the first thing we see is him on a, fallen over tree over a rapid river, and clearly there's been, a capsizing moment, and he's got hold of someone that he's trying to drag out of the water, but she is, the current's too strong for him. He can't get her head above the water. So then someone else further down from this group says, just let her go, and she'll, Kayla, do you mind? Just let her go, and she'll slide away down the river to the point where she can put her head out of the water. But this doesn't happen. She's dead. And then we get to the retail scene. So he obviously works in one of these, go outdoor adventure shops that supplies everyone. And his sister turns up. And, he's really confused. He's like, why are you buying your own stuff for a shoot? Turns out she's being hired as a model, actress, I don't know, to do a commercial for a vegan sausage.
Show me the sausage!
And for this commercial, she, a guy, and, the director, I suppose, are going to go and do some, river rafting, some camping, just show all the different ways that this sausage is fantastic. But she has to buy her own gear. So, we see her brother helping her out. And he, at this point, inquires, who's your guide for this river rafting adventure, to which he gets the disappointing answer of no one. So of course he takes it upon himself, and that's when we get his fantastic performance in the car.
And when they get to the set, Andreas we're introduced, I guess the setting, the location being a river running through a forest, and we're introduced to the actor who has been employed to sell this vegan sausage. And at first I thought he was just a stoner guy, because he comes in and whatever he's saying in his dubbed, and looks a bit shabby and stuff, and he's got that whole comical vibe to him. He's the comical character, but it turns out he's the actor. So he's there. So we've got Andreas there, we've got the actor there, we've got Andreas' sister Mara shows up, then we've got Ava shows up with another guy whose name I've forgotten, and straight away stoner actor guy starts trying to shine on Ava, and I'm like, look, your head's not in the game. You're here to sell a vegan sausage on the river rapids, not to get into Ava's pants. So think about more sausage, less clam.
I wonder whether what's our main guy called?
Andreas.
I wonder whether Andreas actually owns that go outdoor shop, because for this, I don't know how many days they're supposed to be here, but he opens up his Jeep's boot or whatever, and it's just crammed with hard boxes full of supplies and anything
No,
and
he's
everything
just-
you might possibly need.
He's a general employee, but as it's revealed...
So he spent like £3,000 on...
He's a good salesman. He works on commission. So as it's revealed later on, he's taken the piss out of by a stoner actor guy for being overly cautious.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what ends up kind of saving his life, doesn't it? So no, he's not the manager. That's not what I grasped. And he's not high level, but he is a salesman. You know, he sold himself as the tour guide for the shoot.
No, but he sold that stuff to himself then. He would have paid for it. It's not like the production. Because
that's kind of illegal.
He mentioned to his sister, you know, why are you getting your own stuff? So there's no way the production have spent all that money.
That's a sibling rivalry, just like bringing her down. Like, "Huh, sis, you're working on some crappy vegan sausage commercial with no budget.
It's really not.
And here I am selling the people of Estonia high-end camping goods and making a pretty penny while doing so."
Well, anyway...
But, you know, out of my kind heart, I'll come and guide you through the river of fear.
And bring you all this stuff, which...
The river of fear.
Throughout the shoot, I guess, does become quite necessary. I mean, he's got everything in there.
Yeah. Well, as I said, Ava turns up, and it seems like she's more in charge of the shoot.
You're talking about the director?
Yeah, because she, straight away, says that we're getting rid of the lovey-dovey scene, we're cutting that. I was like, why do you need a lovey-dovey scene in the vegan sausage commercial? Is that what they do in Estonia if they want to sell meat goods or fake meat goods?
Well, clearly not, because she has to cut it.
Because, you know, sex sells, so that's a bad decision on her part. As director, get rid of the sex scene for this vegan sausage commercial because sex sells.
We also, at this
sex
point...
sells what? Sex sells everything.
...have been introduced to another character.
The park ranger.
The park ranger.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, clearly doesn't think much of vegan sausages.
He's a bit surly.
Yeah, he's not happy that they're there. Oh, and isn't this when Andreas, like, goes to take a leak?
Andreas has been pissing on a rock.
He pisses on a rock, and it kind of gets, like, slightly nudged or whatever. And the first thing that happens is that this park ranger comes up and is like, you have to go and wash the piss off that rock, put it back in its position... and all of this stuff. And there is like a monogram or something that we notice on the rock, some initials, but that, as far as I know, doesn't lead anywhere.
I also want to mention that the stoner actor guy, he looks like an alternative version of James Maddison, who plays for Tottenham, so I did not enjoy that.
Yeah, wasn't a problem for me.
It'll be a problem. I'm warning people off of this. You know, that might be the one reason I don't want to watch it, even though it's my number one, because this is classic European cinema from Estonia.
This whole thing looked really miserable because, like,
Miserable?
it's clearly
It's nature.
winter. It looks bloody freezing.
To be fair, Estonia did look pretty dank.
It looked
pretty
there were
dank.
no leaves anywhere. It looked, you know, what you'd want for a horror movie, I guess. But it was...
It's your classic
I
forest
would not watch
river setting.
that in an advert and being like, oh yeah, that looks like a good time.
I do feel it important at this point to mention that they come to a bit of a standstill after going down the... I call it River Rapid. It's more like a very placid...
Not if you ask Andreas. He's got safety lines and everything.
Yeah, well, safety first, no matter what. But as they stop off, they then decide to sample this vegan sausage, and Ava gets a sausage sandwich and just devours, like, one throat sip.
Yeah, but that's not supposed to be normal.
A whole sausage. I'm aware of that, but
Okay.
but they've just stopped rafting and they stop off, and you get the more dubbed. And then she eats a sausage sandwich, and then once she devours that, Mara then starts grunting because she's fallen into the river in the daytime. That's what she's doing while Ava eats sausage. Ava then takes Andreas to a car, and she then devours him sexually. So she's devoured a vegan sausage sandwich. Now she's devouring Andreas while, you know, grunting. It's very intense.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yes, but I feel like you've completely skipped the reason why it's happening.
Well, she fell into the river, so
No.
the river's cursed.
Did you not get it?
I got the whole thing. This is number one.
But it's not the river.
It is the river.
It's not the river. It's those weird flowers.
Yeah, it's those dumb little flowers, and there's a specific part of the river, if you go in it, you get cursed.
That wasn't the bit, though.
I'm pretty sure they haven't come across... had they come across the petals yet? At this
Yes, because I was going to say the reason it
Either way,
starts is that they're the
you can
three...
glean from it that it's either the petals or the water. It's more important that she's devouring sausage sandwiches in one go, devouring Andreas in the van, and now she's grunting, and that's when we get Andreas waking up naked in a forest pool.
Yeah, he wakes up in this dirty little pool filled with leaves and stuff, and he's stark as like completely naked. Ladies, there is some willy on
The
site.
thing is, he's only naked for 5 seconds, and next thing you know, he's got his trousers on again. Like, where's he got his trousers from?
Yeah, well, this is a weird thing. He gets out of this pool, he's all dirty and gross, and he's just walking around, and he just finds bits of his clothing, like, littered around.
While he's picking up his clothing, we should probably mention that there's a bit left out where he's just driving in his car, and his gang come out of nowhere in his car, and they start driving up beside him and being really threatening to him. And I'm not sure if he rams him off the road or he just kind of like clips him, he like outsmarts him and manages to get him off the road.
Yeah.
When he then wakes up in the forest pool and starts picking up all his clothing, he just comes across this gang again in the forest.
Yeah, I turned to you and asked whether you'd understood, because I wasn't sure. I don't know now whether, when they've dubbed everything, they've made it this way, but there was nothing, you couldn't tell what they were saying.
Well, there's
It was just blabbering sound.
There's something that I feel is a bad production decision about this, because when he comes across his gang,
Yeah.
we're already watching an Estonian movie dubbed in English, and it turns out even Andreas isn't supposed to understand what the gang is saying because they're speaking in a secret language, I read. So they've got
Is that what it
They've got
is?
Estonians
Why?
speaking in a secret language so that Andreas can't understand, I can't understand Estonian, and I can't understand this. I just thought it was Estonian. I thought, oh, look, they're just speaking Estonian.
I just thought
But
it was
it's
nothing.
a secret language.
But yeah, so it's not clear to us either. Normally, it's, even if the character that we're watching is like, oh my god, these are threatening people, normally the audience is somewhat clued in to be like, oh, actually, no, they're just trying to warn you, or this or that, but there was just no indication for this.
They were certainly warning him against something. Obviously, they kept telling him to go away, didn't they?
Yeah,
Because they were doing something. They were like collecting belongings from previous people or his gang.
This,
Did you get that? Whether
this
it was
movie
previous
made
or
no
his gang?
sense. So I think they were collecting stuff from his, but I don't know. Yeah, so like he's lost all of his people at this point, hasn't he? He's just finding his clothes strewn about, and yeah, he finds this group, this gang, like wrapping up
With their secret language.
like one of the boats from his group and some other bits and pieces, I think, and he's obviously interested as to where they're taking that stuff because that might lead him to his sister.
Obviously, they don't want him to see, so they warn him to go away. They also then physically assault him because he won't go away, and he gets the idea after the second like punch to the face, or whatever. But while he's been punched in the face, this gang have been communicating with someone else unseen with the walkie-talkie. And he's dropped his walkie-talkie, so Andreas has the walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
So he can now evade the gang / find out what they're doing on, by the way, in the middle of nowhere forest, the clearest signal I've ever heard through a walkie-talkie.
Estonia!
Yeah, it's so clear you think I'm in the room next door.
Yeah, I really didn't get it. It was so confusing. But he does eventually reunite with, I think it's his sister's boyfriend.
No, this is towards the end. First of all, he meets this little old weird-faced woman in the woods. She's like sleeping
she's hiding
in a tree.
under a tree.
Yeah.
And also the gang and this woman all have stuff blocking their nostrils.
Again, what was that?
It's not mentioned. I mean, it seems to me, even though I found this film like there were so many loose ends again, which made no sense. But I think what they're trying to say is that in this area of the forest, every now and then there's a certain flower that blooms and it gets into your mind. I think it's just like a psychedelic type thing.
It seems to work that way.
And it makes you, get naked.
Yeah, because the little old lady with the funny face,
aggressive.
she mentions to Andreas just on their walk to this cabin where she's taking him about just naked people acting like animals rutting in the forest.
Yeah.
And then she takes him to this shack, and there's this grey-haired man there.
Her husband.
Yeah, and he's got this weird thing on his back, is the first thing I notice. And Andreas always ends up with one of those. It's inconsequential because we don't
again, another thing that makes no sense to me. But
and the old man,
so
the grey-haired man, he makes his concoction in his shack.
Yeah, he crushes up what to me looked like a flower.
Pomegranates.
Like one of those flowers dried, and then something else, and then it turns into what looks like cabbage soup or something.
Yeah,
by
he's
the
the
time
cabbage
he
man.
actually drinks it.
He's actually the cabbage man. That is his character.
The cabbage man.
And he makes his concoction for Andreas. And Andreas takes it and he's kind of like been forced almost to lay down on his bed. And while he's laying down and had this concoction, he has what I assume is a vision of Ava burying herself naked in dirt. And again, nothing. It won't go back to that either.
Oh, and he also finds the old lady that he found under a tree has like a basket full of stuff she's obviously just like found, and one of those things happens to be the GoPro that he knows is from his like acquaintances. So he asks for it, but she's like, no, finders keepers. So he just takes the little SD card out.
He now goes. So there's all this weird stuff happening. He's been given this concoction. He's met this weird old lady. He's been accosted by this gang. Then he just goes to a store. So it's kind of like there was a idea that they're in the middle of nowhere. They can't go anywhere. First of all, they're in a store. So they're in this store.
But this is by the time he's reunited with someone, right? Because there's two of them.
No, I've got that later. I've still got that later. But maybe he is. He might be. But anyway, they go to a store and there's a weird guy just standing in the store. The bald guy, who I'm not sure was the ranger or not, because he was acting completely different, even though he looks exactly like the ranger. And there's the store clerk, the lady, and he's like, look, I've lost all my people, I need to find them. And it turns out that there's this little like SD card or whatever that the lady has.
No, I've just told you he took it out of that camera that the woman found.
He took it, but she's got it, and she will only give it to him if he cleans the toilet.
No. She has...
So he doesn't have to clean the toilet to get it?
Yes.
Because that's what I got. No. He was like cleaning toilets
okay, so...
to get his footage back.
No.
What's happened? Well, clean his toilet and I'll show you.
I will enlighten you. And yes, he did have to clean a toilet, but he had the SD card, which I just explained he took out of the camera that the other woman had found in the forest. Yeah, I remember that. But he doesn't have a laptop. That's not something he planned for on his outdoor
he just wants
trip.
the laptop.
So he just wants to borrow her laptop.
Okay, I thought he wanted to borrow the SD card. But anyway, he's got to clean the toilet to get this technology.
Which he clearly does, not that we see it.
Did you like that? That's an Estonian touch. I haven't seen that in a movie before.
Yeah, well, also, the lady didn't even know what an SD card was. The other guy had to, like, explain to her that it's, something you can put in the laptop. But
he then gets the laptop.
Yeah, and he's watching the footage, trying to figure out what's happened to them.
Well, he's watching the footage of the others rafting and flossing. And I don't mean teeth.
That awful
do you want to do
viral
it? Do you want to
dance.
Do it?
No.
No?
Especially in the frame that would come up now.
You don't like flossing, do you?
Hate it.
So Estonia are stuck in, 2016? And they're still flossing on the side of riverbanks while rafting, while trying to sell a vegan sausage.
But he doesn't just see flossing. He also sees some rutting between... Mm-hmm. Is it his sister or the director and the actor guy?
I've gotten that Mara is possessed.
Sister.
Mara's possessed. That's his sister.
Yeah.
So he's already seen naked Ava.
Who has a boyfriend.
Yeah. But more pertinently, he comes across a shabby naked guy playing violin in the marshes.
Well, obviously they did first because they're filming it. Yeah, and then he turns around and is like... And that's the end of the footage, I believe. But he also...
And then he finds the actor in the barn. So now he finds...
Okay, so he just stumbles upon the actor guy. And then the actor guy's like, oh, you know what, I'm pretty hungry. Can we just grab a bite? And like you said, this kept confusing me.
No, not can we grab a bite. Can we specifically go and get hot dogs? So you can also get hot dogs in this River of Fear place. There's a store. There's a hot dog place. Yeah,
as I was saying, you mentioned it seemed like they were in the middle of nowhere. And the way he's trekking around the place trying to find his sister and stuff, it seems like... this is eternal forest. There's nothing around. But then within 2 seconds, they're in some cafe. Yeah, they're in the restaurant and apparently... eating sauerkraut. There's a sauerkraut special, which is really being, put on them by the waitress. She really wants to sell this special sauerkraut. So guess what it's got in it? If you're ever in Estonia... It's got vegan sausage in it. Mm-hmm. You must try the vegan sausage sauerkraut, apparently. And at some point, Andreas gets up from the table and he's either going to the restroom or something. And the weird guy from the store is now in the kitchen talking to somebody else. And for some reason, Andreas is listening in on all this information. Yeah, because you didn't react just now when I said it again. So maybe you missed it in the movie or you just don't remember. But yeah, so they say, the special, it's sauerkraut with vegan sausage. And Andreas is like, well, hang on a second. Vegan sausage, that can't be that common, can it? So he's going to check in the kitchen whether it's their vegan sausage, which of course they brought with them for the advert. See, you and Estonian storytelling are really syncing. And it turns out it was. You see the packaging, which we saw earlier when they showed them to the ranger. The same sausages that crew brought is now in this random cafe's kitchen. So he's like, how did it end up here? I'm quite towards the end now in my notes. So yeah, you've just said that he's spoken or listened in onto this conversation.
earlier on in the movie when he's in his car. I'm not sure it's when not when he's got the gang beside him, but he's driving down the highway and he sees a kind of goth girl by the side of the road, and it makes him do a double take, and he has to slam to a stop.
That's literally the first thing that happens when you see the crew all setting out on this adventure, and he doesn't. I found that weird though. Like, she's there in the middle of nowhere. She has at a bus stop.
Yeah, she's at a bus stop. Yeah,
but
it's just a stick with a bus sign on it.
Yeah, it's probably going to be like one bus every 4 hours or something. And he just doesn't even bat an eyelid. He's like, nah, not going to give her a lift.
Are you saying that Estonia doesn't have the infrastructure to get public transport at a more reasonable rate?
I don't think it's Estonia as a general, but by this like lack of anything else out there, I doubt it was much frequented.
So I've mentioned her because after he's seen this weird person,
but I wasn't finished. I think it's so strange that he didn't give her a lift. Why wouldn't you give her a lift?
Well, she was a bit ghostly. She was slightly ghostly. I wasn't getting that this was like a complete real person here. Probably because she was so...
But it's not like he was in any danger. There were loads of them in the car.
You take your chances with a goth, didn't you? Like, do you pick up the goth at the side of the road, or do you just leave the goth at the side of the road?
Clearly, he should have picked her up.
Yeah.
Because that, again, seemed to have something to do with it, but then I don't think it did.
If I remember, she was like a reasonably attractive goth, so that's more reason to pick her up, I guess.
There you go. One reason or another.
At this point, I've now got the ranger and the gang leader have now come into contact with Andreas again, and they show him a video of Ava being an animal.
Yeah. Okay, so Andreas has like followed them all with Actor Guy, I think, followed them all to their like some cabin in the woods thing or whatever, and they're all in cahoots, and he finds they're rolled up like supplies and stuff, so he knows that there's something to do with it. And he kind of confronts them and is like, you know, I want my sister back. And they say something along the lines of, we're taking care of her until she gets better. So it seemed to me like, obviously all the residents in this area know about this flower, and that if you sniff it when it blooms or something, you're going to go a bit mental for a bit.
It's more like they're ticked off that people have come to this part because they know that trouble is going to happen, rather than them actually trying to do them any harm. It's like they're more trying to warn them away from this leafy flower and this part of the river. So no one is saying, yeah, we're looking after her because we're the only ones that know how to basically get the effects of this flower out of her. So just leave us to it. And that's pretty much what must have happened, because after he's shown the video, we're then taken to this like lounge bar where the goth girl...
It's the cafe again. Yeah, it's a lounge bar cafe place.
Yeah, I did...
With live music.
I did half think this is the cafe, but I wasn't sure, because all of a sudden there's like a lounge act.
Because there's that same woman smoking and explaining stuff.
Goth woman from the side of the road is in the band. The shabby violin man is in the band. And let me tell you, it's a bloody racket.
It's awful.
It's just a noise. It's
so
the worst
horrible.
band I've ever heard. And then, like you say, this woman's like telling a story, this deep story. And she's like, oh yes, people come here and they want to die, but then they hear shabby man's violin playing and they want to live. I'm like, no one's going to want to live after hearing that. If anything, you're going to top yourself sooner.
Life can only get better after
life can
hearing
only
that.
Absolutely.
But was it her as well who had a husband who drove his truck into the water, or was that someone else?
You've lost me already.
So someone's husband... Oh no, that was it. It was the lady that he found under a tree with the thing over her nose, who had the thing. She explains to him that her husband was in his like van or whatever, and it went into the river at this one specific spot where the violinist is as well. And he was under there for like, I don't know, 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever, too long to have survived. But then when the like emergency services turn up and fish him out of the submerged vehicle, he's alive. Yeah. And apparently now he has he's attuned to like the river or something.
That's what I'm saying. There was a spot in the river where if you fall into certain spots in the river, you're also infected.
Yeah, so this is the place where Andreas and the actor guy then, after hearing this story and, I don't know, trying to figure stuff out, Andreas is still trying to locate his sister, so he's willing to do anything. So the two of them, he prints out from that little SD card on the woman's laptop, he prints out a shot. This is what it looks like. This is what the part of the river looks like where the violinist is.
It's the exact piece of water you need to find.
And it works. He manages to find it, doesn't he? And you see the top of the submerged vehicle as well. Mm-hmm. And like a plant coming up out of it. Were you going to say something?
Is it at this point, or is it during the lecture that they're getting in the jazz cafe lounge bar place?
With the best sauerkraut.
That we get the Andreas water segment. That weird underwater segment
That
where he
comes
sees...
now. So
Right.
once they find this place in the river, this spot, Andreas seems to think that he might be able to find out what's happened with his sister if he goes to the bottom. So he gets the actor
because you just
guy...
said that actor guy's keeping watch, isn't he?
The actor guy's got a bit of rope. Andreas has put it around him and obviously said to the actor, oh, by the way, I can hold my breath for 2 minutes. So at 1
Any
minute
longer.
50, just pull me out, right? But we see Andreas going into this murky water and he's following this like tree route and it's going down and down and down to the point where there's no more give in the rope. So he just takes the rope off, which obviously we know that's a bad idea.
But there's a naked woman to be found as well, so...
And he goes further and further down into the deep. And yeah, this movie had some really weird, like, artistic shots.
I thought that was a cool segment, the underwater segment.
Yeah.
You had a bit of...
It was
wobbly face.
bizarre. It was like
Yeah.
a weird mix of... I don't really know what it was trying to show, though.
It's like that Homer watching Twin Peaks, you know, brilliant. I have no idea what's going on.
It was exactly like that. It was so strange.
After the water segment, so he has his 2-minute water segment.
And he almost drowns.
Yeah, but now he's back in Cabbage Man's, like, shack. And
But
he's almost catatonic, isn't he?
yeah, but
he manages to awaken him.
You kind of briefly mentioned it. This is the moment where, right at the bottom, when he thinks, you know, he's going to drown and he can't get back up to the top, he gets, like, one of the roots from this
The back of him.
tree in
Yeah.
his back. And
Mhm.
obviously that's what Cabbage Man
Has.
has. And yeah, so he comes out with this thing in his back and he's comatose or whatever you said. So
Nature is in them, yeah. He ends up after this catatonic at Cabbage Man's place.
yeah.
But then he manages to wake him quite easily. He's not catatonic for long.
Oh yeah, and Cabbage Man has not said a word since it's happened to him,
Cabbage
by the
Man
way.
is
He's
silent.
a mute.
He doesn't need to talk. His performance is enough to know that he is Cabbage Man and this is what he does.
And make kraut.
So he manages to bring back Andreas. And then he wakes and he drives home with the actor and the ranger in his car. And at the same time, his sister Mara and the other guy, they've sent him a video on his phone saying, oh, we're fine, just couldn't find you, so we see you when we get home. So no one died and everyone's going home.
Yeah.
And I didn't get it. I didn't get it because...
Do you know what?
Did anything happen? Was it all just hallucinations? Did they all just, take this drug and we've milled about? And like I said, was it people just like annoyed that they were there and put themselves in danger more than anything? Or was it, the river? It's the river of fear.
Do you know what's really bizarre is that I keep saying bizarre. I didn't understand what the hell was supposed to have happened in this movie, and yet, as we've been talking about it, clearly I've picked up on more details than you have. So I don't understand how you can like this movie when I'm like, what?
The details you picked up on, though, weren't things that, like, connect here and connect there. It wasn't like that. Whether I thought it was, though, the river doing it or Petal doing it is irrelevant. It still happens. So the little bits I didn't pick up on were kind of, like, nothing to do with me piecing it together. What I would just say is, when we were watching the cafe, restaurant, lounge place, it kind of reminded me a little bit of the ending of most of the episodes of Twin Peaks: The Return, where they just had, like, a lounge performance by sometimes famous people. So, and this film was also strange and unexplainable. So is this Estonia does Lynch?
Maybe.
Because if this is the way Estonia's going in horror cinema, then I am all in. I'm all in like Tulpa.
That ending that you mentioned, where he just gets like a
Show
video
me your
message
Tulpa.
from his sister and her boyfriend that they're just, they're fine, they're off somewhere. Yeah, that is so strange. Like, how does that wrap up anything? Why is that the end of this movie? And I wonder if you watch this film...
The ending did kind of suck. The ending sucked. Because it was just, we're driving home now. I know here's a message from the others. Everyone's fine, and it kind of renders the rest of it just irrelevant.
What does this mean?
What does it mean? If they'd had a more even just ambiguous ending, that would have suited it so much better than everyone's fine, and we use the technology again, and we're getting out of the forest. Probably going to hit you up at a restaurant. I'll meet you at the lounge bar.
We'll have some sauerkraut.
Yeah,
it'll be great.
And we'll listen to that man play violin, and we won't want to end ourselves.
There are so many things I don't understand, and like they never explained why these people are collecting the belongings of the intoxicated. And
I may be mistaken here, but the artistic nature of this movie, I'm pretty sure it ends with, fade out on the naked shabby man playing violin in the marshes.
If it does, I don't remember.
Here's a naked man playing violin in the marshes.
There was
theme.
quite a lot of like random nudity in that very European way of
the nudity
unsexualised.
suited the movie. You know, Ava digging herself. I knew there was going to be some nudity in this. You could just tell the sultry artistic overtones of this film, this piece.
I don't think sultry is quite the right word.
So
it was like
this week, Estonia smashes the USA on every count artistically.
in your opinion.
I'd also say that I do think that the performances were probably quite good. None of them were like annoying me or anything like that in terms of watching them.
And the character of the like actor guy was a bit shit.
Stupid
No, it was
dubbing.
kind of crap.
So,
I just
yeah, so you don't
wonder,
like Andreas, no?
I wonder. No, that's not the actor guy.
Oh, the actor guy, right?
Yeah.
The main actor, yeah. Stone
Not
actor
the main
guy.
guy was fine.
Stone actor
yeah.
guy.
I just wonder if this film would have more like clues and make more sense in its original tongue. I don't know if it's a lost in translation
Always.
kind of thing.
But like I said, it should come to me now for dubbing after this nonsense. So are you interested in seeing more stuff from Estonia? Personally, I can't wait.
I'm not even sure this one is actually from Estonia, because don't
It's
they say they're
Estonia.
going to the Estonian border, which would indicate that they're not in Estonia. They're bordering it.
I'm pretty sure the way that I've...
Estonia!
the way that I've been doing that the whole time, I'm pretty sure I've seen something. This is definitely
Let's just hope
an
it's
Estonian movie. Yeah, and, it's the Estonian film industry is on fire, and I'm here to tell you, if you don't know already, that it is lit AF. So get on River of Fear, or if you're Karen, don't get on River of Fear.